Okay. So the sun is in my face. We're going to roll with it. So, welcome back to episode 2 for the 122 people who watched my first video. You are officially my real OGs. That's a YouTube thing. I'm Betty Howard. I'm Stronger Than Stroke. And I said I was going to tell my story. So, here it is. Part however many to get through 6 years of my life. So, we're just talking friend to friend, and I will take you through it. So, where I left off of my last video is I said that I had 3 years of brain bleeds. Now, of course, I didn't know that that's what was going to happen. I didn't know that I was going to have a stroke, be in the hospital for 2 months, go home, and then think that that's the start of my real recovery. Every stroke survivor I know, probably everybody who's ever been in the hospital, we cannot wait to get home. I needed to get home. I knew as soon as I got home, everything was going to be good. 3 years of brain bleeds. We'll get to that. But hospital stay. The hospital stay was quick. It was the skilled nursing facility. It was the rehab hospital. It started out good and ended up brutal. And it was because depression had sat in, is that how you say it? Depression, I want to say depression sat in. I guess it came in. I guess it came in the room because it was there. But yeah, depression was real. I remember sitting in my wheelchair and I was just like this. I was so uncomfortable in my own body. The left side was so heavy, and all I wanted to do was get out of there. I wanted to get home. And the hospital stay was interesting. I was in a skilled nursing facility. This was not a facility that was for stroke survivors. This is skilled nursing. This is everybody, hip replacements, older folks that just aren't able to care for themselves or maybe had a fall, things like that. So I was exposed to things that you don't want to be exposed to. And what it really did was give me a softer side for the elderly, the softer side for when you want to care for yourself, but you're just not able to. And that's what I was in. You know, I wanted to care for myself, I just wasn't able to. And I really felt like when I got home, things were going to get better. And it didn't. It didn't. It didn't get better. It didn't get better. Not yet, anyway. We will get to better soon, hopefully, in these conversations. But going home was, first of all, I had to move from an upstairs apartment to a bottom floor apartment because getting upstairs multiple times a day just was not going to be good. And so now I have to move my whole family. And the truth of the matter is, when I got home, I thought I was the same Betty. I was on the phone, I'm scheduling movers, I am trying to pack boxes, sitting in a wheelchair with a box, next to me, trying to one-handed pack. Who are you? What are you doing? Sit down. If you haven't learned anything at this point, sit down. Like, that was not my job. That is not what I should have been doing. But there's a part of this whole process where you start to learn that the old Betty is not the same Betty, and it definitely isn't the new Betty. It took me time to learn limitations and when I should say no, and how to manage my energy and how to manage my life and how to manage myself. So we had to move, and we did. It was not a fun process. Now we're in this new apartment, and something told me I wasn't going to be there long, and I wasn't. It was within weeks that the person I was with decided they no longer wanted to be in the relationship. I was in a situation where had to look for somewhere to go. And of course, because my family loves me, they were like, move with us, move closer to us, and you can live with us. And I couldn't. My independence level, I was out of the house at 18 years old. I graduated midterm my senior year because I wanted to be done. I wanted to be grown up. And I jumped into being a grown up very early in my life. And so moving in with my family was not an option in my mind at all. Not gonna happen. So I'm looking for an apartment. I can barely walk. I am in a 4-prong cane, which honestly, those are pretty amazing. They're called quad canes. They're awesome. If you ever need stability, get a quad cane. They are awesome. They're heavier canes, but they give you real stability. And I was walking so slow. I didn't have a lot of gas in the tank, and I was looking for an apartment. Okay, don't tell my doctor, but I was driving 2 months after my stroke looking for an apartment. And with all Betty's management skills, I found one. So I found my apartment. I am now leaving everything behind. Why? Because I can't physically move anything, And so I left everything. I started all over. And when I mean over, I mean over. I took my clothes, I took my pictures, I took my sentimental things, and I started over. And I was okay with that. I really was. And thankfully, yes, I'm going to say it, the Lord provides, because somehow I was able to get my down payment or deposit. I was able to furnish my apartment. I have kids at this point. They're still my kids, but they're just older. So I have a 10-year-old and a 19-year-old, and we have a new life. And I remember this day we're driving by. So the new apartment, to get to the new apartment, you had to pass the old apartment. And my daughter's like, Mom, you missed the turn. You missed it. And I'm like, baby, we don't live there anymore. And she was like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, I've done the same thing. Like literally, I've done the same thing. there were so many changes and so much going on that it was hard to keep up. It was so hard. And now I'm in this new apartment. I am driving my son. I have him half time, and I'm driving him to the other city. Not recommended for new stroke survivors, but when you're a mom and you're gonna freaking do it. And that's what I did. I got up in the mornings, I drove my baby to school, I came home, I did physical therapy, sometimes driving myself to physical therapy, and picked him up from school. My daughter enrolled in a program. There was months there that I was taking my son to school and taking my daughter to school and pushing my limits, and that's not always good. You know, you have to learn what your limits are, and I know us mamas, as stroke survivor mamas, we're gonna push our limits for our kids, period. And that's okay. You know, there's no regrets in any of how I handled things or what I did, because I did the best that I could do. And hindsight is always the 2020, the clear vision. My hindsight for you is I'm sharing what I've been through. I'm sharing, maybe you're in that spot now and you're going, whoa, that's me. You will figure it out. You will. And it does get better. I will say, oh, I left out a fun part. So before I moved, I get a phone call, and it's from my job. And this job, oh my goodness, I loved my job, seriously. And I worked for a staffing firm. And prior to that, I worked in business consulting, which I loved that job. I did business consulting for 3 years, absolutely loved that, and they laid me off. They moved the company to Northern California. So with that said, I had to find a new job, which I did, and it was in staffing, and I absolutely loved that. At that time, I was 36. I said I have 4 years to get myself into management. I did it in 2. I sound like Eva from Deliver Us from Eva. She's like, I gave myself 4 years to do it, and I did it in 3. Yeah, I did it in 2. So that was a huge goal for me, and I did it, and I loved what I was doing. I managed a team of 12, and I was in my zone, you know, and I always hear people say, like, I was at the peak of my career when blank happened. Yeah, I was at the peak of, well, I don't think it would have been my peak, because I had in my vision, I was like, I want to be a VP, I want to be a this. So it probably wasn't my real peak, but it was the highest point that I had got to in my career, and I was loving what I was doing. So point is, I get a telephone call from my job saying, hey, we need you back. And I think it may have either been by November 1st or December 1st. I had my stroke in May. So they were being patient. But when you go through what I went through, 6 months isn't going to do it. Like 6 months isn't it for recovery. And I remember, because I'm a bit stubborn, I was like, I'm going back. I am going back to my job. And this thought came to me, and it was like, if you go back, you're not only going to hurt yourself, you're going to hurt your team. I was going to hurt them because if I went back and then had to go back out again, that was going to be harder on them, versus just adapting to a new manager. My stubborn side said I was going back. My rational, logical, I know you men out there say we don't have a logical side. However, my logical side said don't do it, and I didn't. I still was very hopeful that I would go back. I guess you'll have to wait to see where I went career-wise. But I had to surrender, and that's not easy. Surrendering is not easy. I had to surrender that one. I had to surrender my relationship. I didn't want to do that. I had to surrender my job. I didn't want to do that. Wow. I had to surrender my home, originally from moving to leaving. I didn't want to do that. But I didn't want pity either. And I definitely, speaking of the relationship, I didn't want pity love. I don't want you to be with me because you feel sorry for me. I don't want you to be with me because you feel like I can't do it. Oh, I wanted to tell this story to you guys. I'm going to tell this story and then I'm going to end this video. So, the year of 2018 is the year of my stroke. Every year I had a word of the year. That year was legacy. What will my legacy be? And the reason why is because that was the year I turned 40. That's a milestone. And 40, you should kind of have a little gauge on maybe what you want to leave behind. Like, who am I? What do I want to be known for? What do I want to leave on this earth when I depart? That was the word of the year. And interesting enough, when you face death, it gets really real on what would you have been remembered for. I would have been remembered for number one, freaking hard worker. Yes. Like, I will work my butt off. I will do it. I do what we need to do to get it done, like whatever that is. And so I definitely would have been known for that. Hopefully my kids would have said that I was a loving mom, and I don't know. But at that time, I knew that year I wanted to focus on my legacy, and what a better way to figure out your legacy than facing death. I'll see you in episode 3. Take care.